Hi there, my name is Kay Moon and I'm a Western astrologer and twin flame channel, and this is a video about the Scorpio full moon taking place on May 1st, 2026 at 1:22 p.m. If you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States, definitely check a time zone converter for your local time. Whoa, this is an incredible full moon. One of the things that stood out to me about this full moon was how much of an ending it is baked into the full moon. Full moons are normally, monthly closures, monthly completions, monthly cycles of things coming to harvest or fruition before we start all over again. Scorpio specifically deals with the sign of death, endings, and closure. And so when we have a full moon in Scorpio, it dawned on me this year. I was like, oh, this is kind of like the final period on the sentence concerning the last astrological year. Aries is the opening of the astrological new year. And the two happen almost like in inverse this year. We just had the Aries new moon. So the astrological new year opened with overlap from the closure of last astrological year, which is happening now at this Scorpio full moon. And so some of my Star Club members had been sharing, I really feel like the old and the new are overlapping right now. I'm having this experience of all the things all at once. And I said, yeah. There's good reason for that. And now, as I look at this Scorpio new moon, or sorry, full moon, this makes even more sense. So here is our full moon at the 11th degree of Scorpio, right down here at the base of the chart. It has some interesting aspects, and I'm going to break them down one at a time so you understand the experiences you may have. We see a square to Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto is fear. Pluto is also power. It's also manipulation and control, in addition to being like all of our deepest, most difficult emotions. Scorpio governs these things as well. This, and then Juno is conjunct Pluto and also square this new moon. Juno's our divine feminine energy. She's the elevated energy of Venus. Whereas Venus is the love and the chemistry, Juno elevates that into commitment and full partnership. So, what's the square mean? Well, we're going to get some emotional intensity and connections, both in friendships, work relationships, and romantic and business partnerships. Tension can be there where emotions are running deep and concentrated at this time. There is potential for compulsive behaviors as well as explosions and implosions here if emotions are not intentionally regulated. Further, there's indication of power struggles in the atmosphere because emotions can run unchecked, causing people to feel free to get their way at any cost. Now, on the other hand, this really is going to be rousing for those who have been asleep in situations that do not serve them to use their power and break the chains that bind them. It is an energy of liberation caused by emotional fed upness. And on the other hand, this can cause a sense of feeling completely overwhelmed if you're already a deep feeler or have your natal Pluto and natal moon speaking to one another in your chart. This is where extra, again, emotional regulation can really help, especially if you know in that heightened state, you sometimes take it out on your relationships, since Juno is about partnerships and she's in a sign, Aquarius, that deals with communities and friendships. This is a really important time period to do that nervous system regulation and emotional self-regulation if the feels get really real at this time. The moon is also conjunct an energy we see called Haumea, and there's Haumea here. If you're new, welcome. I do read asteroids and trans-Neptunian objects. Break them out, break them down as I go, but more than focusing on teaching astrology here, I like to give you the interpretation so you know what to expect. The creation goddess is retrograde here in the sign that deals with power, fear, death, endings, and completions, and control, Scorpio. So rather than creating something new, as her name suggests, in retrograde in this sign, the creation goddess is reviewing existing creations and purging what's no longer aligned. This will be especially true when it comes to emotional processes, programs, paradigms, and attachments that we've outgrown. Alternatively, if there are any reproductive health challenges that pop up, this is a really great time to check in with your doctor, especially if the health challenges have been reoccurring. Definitely a great time to get those hormones checked as well if you have recognized anything feels off. We also see this full moon in a loose trine to Jupiter there. Jupiter likes to expand whatever he touches. This is going to facilitate emotional growth and awareness about what's ended, completed, and truly done and over with when it comes to our emotional processes, frameworks, and needs. This will be especially true if you're getting over the hump with an addiction, which I'll explain toward the end, as we have an aspect pattern called a yod or a yod. I don't know. How do you pronounce it? Yod, yod? I'd love to see in the comments to this full moon, and yods give us a chance to unlock access to a planet's energy through harmonizing the energy it's not speaking with. Sounds counterintuitive and a little bit complex, but I promise it'll make sense when you see the breakdown. But if you're new, welcome. My name is K Moon, and like I said, I'm a Western astrologer and twin flame channel, and this is a video about that Scorpio full moon. Getting back into this, Jupiter trine the full moon from Cancer here. This is where emotions can run high at the full moon, and this can be both beautiful and challenging depending on the emotions that you're dealing with. As this full moon this hits the 60-day activation point after the Virgo full moon lunar eclipse on March 3rd. So think back 60 days ago, we had that Virgo full moon lunar eclipse. Some of the closure themes opening now will have to do with how that eclipse impacted your natal chart. So you're going to want to check for planets or angles near 13 degrees of Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, Aries, as well, and Leo, because those are the ones that would have been most deeply impacted. And further, when I get to the section of this lunar update called signs who will feel it most, there's a whole other set of signs who will also find this very impactful full moon. Now, for some, this will be a callback and final completion to things linked to that Virgo full moon lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipses are full moons on steroids, according to my astrology teacher, Nadia Shah. For others, this will be the initiation of a closure that was meant to happen during the cycle to mark its finality with a Scorpio full moon. This is double closure, as Scorpio itself is the sign of endings. Full moons mark monthly completion cycles. You could even consider this a triple ending if you bring in that we are at the 60-day mark of a closing eclipse process. It's a bit of bold, highlight, underline, italics from the universe saying, hey, this thing, yeah, that thing is over. It's over, dead and done and dusted. Please let it go. The thing that's closing, given the full moon, is in Scorpio, and it receives this trine from Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. Will have to do with something these two water signs have in common in their governance if it's closing now instead of earlier in the cycle. So, what do Cancer and Scorpio have in common? Emotions. Big, deep trenches, deep emotions. Make you want to crank up the love songs or cry into a pillow feels. Cancer deals with all emotions generally, and hosting Jupiter, there are amplification of all the feels, and that's been going on since last July. That's going to come to an end this July when Jupiter finally pulls into Leo. Okay. If you've been emotionally repressed or can't figure out what you feel, and by all the feels, I truly mean every feeling, this is going to be perfect for release. Getting in touch with love, happiness, joy, feeling entertained, amused, irritated, frustrated, giddy, excitement, anxious, vulnerable, curious, like literally anything, all the feelings. Cancer is the ruling sign of the field. With Jupiter in Cancer, there's been amplification of the fields, and this can really make all of us feel more sensitive than usual when it comes to the way we've been navigating everything in life. But Scorpio, on the other hand, where this full moon is, deals with the deeper emotions that we'd rather not have to feel, things we might repress, run from, or try to take the edge off. Feelings like fear, feelings like shame, guilt, regret, the shadow side of power, power at extremes, both excess and repression, lust and rage. So, And lust isn't necessarily a bad thing. These aren't necessarily bad things. All of these feelings, fear, shame, guilt, they tell us important information. So I'm not demonizing these emotions. I'm just saying these are emotions that human beings, generally speaking, would rather not have to feel. So what does that mean in terms of what's closing? If closure is opening at this full moon, the closure is going to be linked with emotional patterns and programs that keep our shadow sides going. Here are a few limited examples, but feel free to drop in the comments real life examples you're watching play out in present time. Number one, addiction to feeling good and dopamine can stop us from facing our bigger emotional truths and living a life of quiet desperation as we try to make what no longer works and doesn't feel right work once again. That addiction to feeling good can lead to coping mechanisms like overspending on shopping or hoarding, using sex to cope instead of for actual intimacy, substance dependency to escape challenging feelings that would otherwise force us to make change in our lives for the better, etc. Number two, emotional loops of self-shame, fear, beratement to force ourselves to be smaller, more silent versions of ourselves and live a life in a shell because living within feels safer than being our true self and living out loud. Number three, emotional programs of regret being a nobler way to live than vulnerability and exposure to risk. Feeling safer in healing circles, therapy, sound baths, and meditation to deal with thwarted potential instead of actually taking the risk to do something challenging that creates real change. Because at least if we recognize where we didn't act in the past, we've done something rather than actually doing the something that would have shifted a timeline and altered our reality. You get the idea. Where we've run an emotional blueprint that doesn't serve us, this full moon is set to amplify it. Thanks, Jupiter, friend over here. Thank you, thank you, thank you for amplifying what's not working so that we can end it. Okay. So those are some examples, but they're not the only examples. Just wanted to float them so that we weren't just talking so much in theory, but instead we could have some concrete ways to understand what we're seeing in the people around us and in our own lives. Here we have this full moon also in a semi-sextile to Lilith, who's out in front in Sagittarius. So this and the next aspect are why I interpreted Jupiter trine moon, which is normally considered to be a very positive aspect and transit. This is why I'm interpreting it the way that I am. In addition to the full moon being in Scorpio, Lilith is insistent on having it her way in every situation she's in. Lilith won't play ball unless she's playing by her rules. And in the semi-sextile in front of this full moon, she's over here in Sagittarius. The full moon is back here in Scorpio. In the semi-sextile, she knows exactly what that's going to look like for her. Now, on the one hand, this can create a blind spot for us where we can't see the forest for the trees. We're unable to see the bigger picture if we're not getting our way. Now, if you've ever driven down a highway behind a large semi-truck or lorry in front of you and to the left and to the right, then they've blocked your ability to see the signage if you're too close. That semi-sextile gives you that experience. It's the experience of going too close to something that's much bigger in front of you and blocking your view. Okay. This one in particular has the impact of wanting things to go our way to such a degree that we might be willing to use the full moon energy to give up and walk away if we can't have it our way, or some of the other aspects to this full moon to steamroll and demand our way to make sure that we get what we want. Either one, not so awesome. Sometimes it's nice to take the foot on the gas and not trail so close behind a semi truck or a lorry, huh, guys? Yeah, then we can see better. For those who have been hanging on to a dead-end situation way too long, this is going to be a great thing. It was time to let go, and the emotions that surface at this full moon will be too strong of a barometer of your inability to hold on to the way it was. It's just what Dr. Universe ordered to force the hand of change. For those who've been doing it their way for far too long at the cost of others and their own benefit, this is where the pushback you receive will force you to negotiate or force a break. Which one? That's going to be up to you. But the big feels that point to change being required from you and others will need to be dealt with at this full moon. So be ready for it. Change is afoot. We also see this full moon in a sextile, sextile to an energy called Pholus. Pholus is one of the centaurs that just came with my software. That's why I read them. I learned about them, I researched them, and now I read them. There we go. No, nothing more complex than that. Now here's Pholus, which represents toxicity in the sign of Capricorn, the sign of the old and the old guard. Pholus, 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 baby. You are in too many of my reads. Oh my gosh. I've never had to report on Pholus so doggone much as I've needed to in the last 6 months, as new and full moons have aspected this energy more than they've ever had. But here we are, we meet again. Pholus brings toxicity into the mix, but with purpose. In Capricorn, we're talking about the old guard, business as usual, traditions, holding on to standards because that's just the way it is, or that's just what we do without evolving with the times. This is structures that have overgrown their usefulness. This is boundaries that are with walls that are too high. This is where those things can become toxic. This amounts to the sign of the mountain goat climbing in a direction that's already proven it's not working. With Pholus in communication with the full moon, we're going to have some feelings about this too, recognizing that the way we've always done things costs too much to maintain. Something's got to give, and it's got to give now. So I've mentioned that this would be a year of alignment many times, many ways on this channel. All of the people going to the places where alignment lives for them. It's a great migration across life's chessboard. Now, whether that's ending a relationship, housing situation, career itself, or just ending an emotional pattern you've been using in a relationship, housing situation, or career that's caused it to be toxic for you, that's going to depend on your situation. For some, this is a material ending. Something in the 3D closes. For others, this is a mental, emotional, internal ending. The 3D may look the same, but the way you approach it is new. For some, this is going to be ending, like I said, of an internal pattern, and it very much could be not enoughness, shame, or guilt that then turns your entire relationship, entire job or career around. Ending years of power struggles or feeling unmet, not because the other person or the circumstance has changed, but because you've changed. You're just not willing to be held hostage by an old story anymore. Okay. So there's so many different ways that this can play out, different ways for different people. Pay attention to what's aligned for your life stream. We're all having different experiences of the same energy. Now, let me make sure I talked about Pluto. I did talk about Pluto. Okay, let's talk about this yod before I let you go. If you hang around, I'm going to talk about this yod, and then we're also going to speak to um, a something called First Look if you're new here. First Look is where I look at the energies coming up from this full moon into the Taurus new moon. Happy birthday, Taurus. It is going to be your season as this full moon gets posted, this lunar update. And I'll also talk to you about which signs are going to feel this energy the most. So let's first talk now. I want to speak to this yod. So here's Mars in Aries, conjunct Saturn, also in Aries. And here is Venus in Gemini. Okay. Here's the full moon. The full moon is 150 degrees from Saturn and Mars and 150 degrees from Venus over here. Loosely, it's not exact because they're not all at 11 degrees, but close enough. That 150-degree angle is an aspect that we as astrologers call the inconjunct or quincunx. That simply means these planets are in what we call no conversation at all. Their energy doesn't easily access one another. Venus can't easily access the moon, and neither can Saturn or Mars. They're inaccessible to each other, meaning they don't influence each other. They don't have an impact on one another at all. It's as effective as saying Venus isn't in the mix, Saturn and Mars are in the mix at this full moon. However, when they all get pulled into the yod formation, again, yod or yod, let me know in the comments. This is where we see they can become accessible to the benefit of all of us here on Earth. Let's talk about how that works. There's tons of lovely healing, breakthrough, growth, and transformation energy that I just mentioned, but they become accessible at this full moon when we take the two energies that are not in communication with the full moon and we harmonize them together. When these two harmonize, they then become accessible to the full moon. It's almost like they meet in the middle at this midpoint and then form an oppositional energy to this full moon, making what they have to offer now accessible to the full moon. But harmonizing them, that's a choice. They are in what's called a sextile to one another, and sextiling energies have to be chosen to work with. Can they work together? Yes. Do they automatically work together? Not the same way you would get with a trine or a conjunction. The sextile takes a little bit of effort to see benefit from. So let's break this down into experiential details. What does that mean you might experience? Okay. Saturn matters over here because Saturn is our boundary maker. He's the structural integrity bringer. He's not in the conversation with the full moon unless he's working with Venus. Mars here is motivation, drive, ambition to change and grow. When these two come together, it's work ethic on steroids. What's Venus bringing to the conversation? Venus in Aries supplies the oxygen of curiosity, the willingness to explore, the capacity to try something new, and the attraction to a road less traveled. Now, you pair that with a little bit of work ethic and discipline. Now we have the out when it comes to all those super heavy emotions, the toxicity of the old, the power struggles that weren't working for us, all of these other planetary energies funneling their energy into this full moon. When we harmonize these guys, now we have a way out through being willing to try something new, ambition for more than what we've had before, curiosity about what's possible, and a magnetism to a road less traveled, open-mindedness. That's that Venus in Gemini, to others' perspectives, and a willingness to look at things from a different perspective, ourself being attracted to other perspectives than just our own. Don't you love how beneficial and kind and benevolent the universe is? I swear sometimes I like at the end of certain days, I'm like, man, the universe feels like it's taking a giant crap on me. I'll either turn around, look at the astrology and say, oh no, God really does love me. Look, he left a way out for me. And that's what it is. It's a way out of some of the heaviness of this energy. Okay. Now, um, this is going to be a blessing with a closure. We have to make sure we're responding to the heightened emotional energy from a new place within ourselves and new actions, which is why the Aries new moon, which happened 2 weeks ago, was so important. It let us see where we needed to make that change within ourselves before coming to this closeout point with the last vestiges of last astrological year before we truly start this new year with a clean slate. Really, really beautiful energy. We got this, guys. Let's talk about signs who are going to feel this most, and I'll let you know what's going on elsewhere in the sky. So you just have a quick heads up about some of the energies that will also be influential, even though they're not talking to this full moon. Signs who are going to feel this, sorry, not new moon, full moon. I keep saying new moon, but I mean full moon. The moon is definitely full. Signs who are going to feel this full moon the most: Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, Cancer, and Pisces. And if you have sun, moon, rising, or stelliums in the mid degrees of these signs, definitely have a re-listen, as these messages may hit closer to home, closer to the full moon. In a moment, we're going to look at how this energy progresses into the Taurus new moon, so we know what we can look forward to next in a segment called First Look. However, elsewhere in the sky, I want to bring you into it. We see Mercury here. This is consciousness and communication. Our friend Mercury is having a conversation where he is conjunct Chiron and Eris. Oh, you beastie little troublemakers. With a loose sextile to Jupiter in Cancer. We also see square, not sextile, that's a square. A loose square here to Juno and Pluto in Aquarius. It's loose because if they were just back here in Capricorn, it would be an exact square. Then we could call this closer to a T-square, but they're not, so we can't do that. We also see a sextile to Chariklo in Aquarius at 26 degrees. These aspects can lend themselves to critical conversations happening that can be the turning point in our year with others, yourself, with a therapist, with a helping professional, somebody who's maybe helping you out with your taxes, helping you out with, something financial, some with family, with housing, somebody who can be an intercessional support for you. These aspects can also leave you spinning in mental circles, defensive and frustrated. Thanks, Chiron. Thanks, Eris, because you're not getting the answers you need to move forward. Now, in Star Club's Lunar Circle, we're going to talk about these aspects in detail and how to make sure you use this energy productively instead of letting them get the best of your interpersonal interactions. Okay. Now, we also have the Mars-Saturn conjunction right over here in Aries, squaring Jupiter there in Cancer, with a loose sextile to Juno conjunct Pluto here in Capricorn. We also see loose sextile to Chariklo there in Aquarius. I love when Chariklo is prominent. She brings so many blessings. These aspects can make this a critical time for getting things done this year. The first half of this year, between now and the end of July, this is the best time to get projects in motion, get things done. The first half of this year has the least retrogrades, but the back half has all the retrogrades. So if there's a time for momentum in your business, in your life, or with your goals, this really is it. The caveat: those recovering from burnout or prone to burnout are at risk of overdoing it. We'll talk about how to work with that in Star Club so that you can make the most of this transit without hurting yourself, because time truly is of the essence here. I can't stress that enough. There is a right time to get things done this year, and now truly is it. And that kind of brings me to the question of the day for this full moon. What are your burnout recovery strategies? Really curious how you overcome adrenal fatigue, burnout, overwhelm when you know you're on a schedule and need to keep going. The first 4 months of this year have been full of expansion for me while simultaneously presenting an unusual amount of hurdles for me. And I've overcome every single one of them. But I can tell you all of that is just my 3D settling into its new timeline and a new reality as I made some foundational shifts in my world last year and the way I allow it to render. But yeah, I'm going to be honest, when you're picking your world up off of one timeline and putting it down on another one, the effort it takes on your humanity, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, the burnout is a little bit like I'm gonna need some strategies, your best strategies. So if you could leave me something in the comments, I'll take it. Because I also have a feeling I'm not the only one who needs it. We also see Venus here in Gemini. We have a loose semi-sextile to Jupiter there in Cancer in opposition to Lilith. Gotta love that conversation in Sagittarius. A trine to Pluto and Juno there inside of Aquarius. A sextile to Neptune, Saturn, and Mars here in Aries, speaking to our lovely Venus. And a loose conjunction to Uranus right next to her there in Gemini. These aspects are very beneficial, very beneficial. Let me put that in all caps. Very beneficial for love and relationship this year. But they do require a particular type of participation from you in order to get to that higher timeline. This is some of the smoothest and supportive aspects for love and forward movement we will have in 2026. And in Star Club, I'm going to detail how long it lasts and what you need to do so that your connections benefit, whether you're in some format of separation, union, looking for something new romantically, so that you don't miss this special window of opportunity. I'm super pumped to talk to you about this. And if you are not in Star Club, my friend, we reopen the doors in May. I'm gonna need you to be there because in Star Club, this is where I give you all the tea on how to work with energy so you're not just waiting and watching any longer. Let's talk about Saturn and Aries. Saturn is conjunct Neptune and Mars to the left and to the right. We see a trine to Jupiter. Why do I keep messing that aspect up? That is a square for Saturn. We see a square to Jupiter in Cancer. And we also see a trine to Lilith in Sagittarius there, as well as that square to Pholus in Capricorn, and a sextile to Juno and Pluto there in Aquarius, a sextile to Ceres here in Taurus. This configuration, if you're dealing with this, is what makes new relationship dynamics real in the 3D, new connection opportunities real in the 3D. This is what's moving things out of the ether and into the world when it comes to what it takes to really have a new timeline, particularly in work and in love. Now, this year is the year of making things real, and there are key ways to participate during this full moon that are part of a series of stepping stones that we're going to have in this upcoming new and full moons that will allow you to have real change this year in the areas of life that matter to you, especially in love and connection, as this year is getting the 3D aligned for all of us for connection to really show up and land and live in our lives. Now in Star Club, we're going to go deeper on the steps and what they are for you at this full moon, so you're not guessing and you're fully prepared as these things unfold. You know what to focus on, what to do, and what to avoid, okay, to get the best out of this energy. And lastly, we have, and I've been talking about this little party since last year, Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, all in a conversation together on that grand awakening of consciousness train, and I'm here for it. They're underpinning the year with an energy of eyes open, clear vision, open hearts, and ascended minds. There's a breaking of the world as we know it that's underway with this energy, and it's allowing us all to move to new timelines. But conscious focus and effort are key with Pluto and Uranus in air signs, Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius specifically. This is not the time to throw your hands up in the air and just quote, leave it up to the divine. The divine is waiting on you, boo. Like I've said that so many times on this channel, but I'm saying it again. The divine waits for us with our divine spark, our divinity incarnate to make a decision. And then it lines up with our choices. Okay. There's no way participation through, um, there's no way that non-participation with our thoughts and actions allows new timelines to come into form. We have to participate with our thoughts and actions. Neptune's in the sign of action. Pluto and Uranus are in the sign, are two air signs that deals with our thoughts. We have to participate at this point. And if we continue to just say, oh, I'm leaving it up to the divine and just wait, this is where, you know, the analogy, it's not even an analogy, it's literally science. When you put a frog into the boiling water and then it hops out, but if you put the frog into cool water and you turn up the heat, it'll just constantly adjust temperature until it cooks to death. Yeah, that's what being on the old timeline is going to be like, where you're just making micro adjustments until you cook to death. Don't do that. Don't be like that, frog. Understand that the heat is getting turned up with the intention that you change, that you move, that you get out of situations that aren't serving you and you go where there's alignment, even if the transition is a little bit uncomfortable temporarily. If you're not a member of Star Club yet, definitely get on the private list to get early access to the member spots that include readings. A lot of the existing members are telling me now that they're planning to hold their spot that includes readings, given how transformative and how much change this year is unfolding for them. They're wanting to keep a spot that allows them consistent monthly access. That way, as they continue to make micro adjustments to get on their higher timeline, they actually have support from their chart that isn't general, but instead is tailored based on what the stars are supporting them to do. Okay. Now, Star Club reopens for enrollment, as I mentioned, in May, and we have 3 levels of membership. The Stellium membership, if you're just not sure what you want to do, but you know you want support, is where you want to start. It's $22 a month, and I would love to have you there. Definitely jump on the private list if you would like to know for sure what's going on and how to use the energy in a more in-depth way. Shout out to everyone who had a reading with me in April when I had limited availability to read again. I was super pumped we had the chance to take a deeper dive together. I look forward to welcoming you into Star Club for continued support. And those of you who know you want to join, private list is the best way to guarantee access to getting a reading with me as we move forward, since readings will be quite limited this year, since I'm focusing more on teaching to get everyone supported onto their new timeline. Let's talk about this Taurus new moon. This is my first look at it. If you're new here, definitely hit that subscribe button. Hit the like if you're hearing things that already resonate for you. I've noticed people who stick around here tend to feel these energies early. This is why I have included first look, so that you can understand how the energy from the Scorpio full moon evolves into this Taurus new moon on May 16th at 4 p.m. Eastern, if you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States. Taurus. Full new moon, 25th degree of Taurus. Very interesting because it's conjunct, Uranus and Mercury and Ceres. Closure, consciousness, quantum leaps. We all just jumping onto new timelines, I see. Wow. And we have Jupiter speaking to this energy, bringing in a portal of manifestation, opening a portal of manifestation. If you've been around for a minute, you've heard me talking about this manifestation window that opens here, but then peaks in June and July. I'm going to be speaking more to it then, but stick around. Again, if you're on that private list, I'll let you know when I reopen my workshop, Manifestation Mastery, so that you can learn the manifestation technique that is buried in your chart and stop using techniques that only work halfway or for other people and wondering why you're blocked. You're not blocked, you're just using someone else's technique. We all have our own technique. Now here, Mars, oh no, it's a whole party. It's Eris, Chiron, and Mars together, speaking in semi-sextile to this new moon in Taurus. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, Cheraclo, we like to see her in the mix. She tends to bring a bit of blessing and levity. I also am recognizing, who else? I'm seeing some Venus. She's pulled up to the party. She's really doing the most. She's doing a lot to get our love lives on track between that Scorpio full moon and when she pops up in June over here, conjunct Jupiter. It's going to be an amazing season for love. Again, we're going to get you ready for that early in Star Club so that you understand how to use this energy for love and money. Okay. So, what I think when I see this is that this is going to be a full moon that, or sorry, new moon. Now I keep saying full moon. New moon in Taurus is going to be one that allows us to shift timelines, specifically because it's going to elevate our consciousness. We're going to be allowed to think things that we've never thought before. Those of you who are really sensitive to sort of, how can I put this in non-medical terms? Let's just say extremes, right? You tend to go from low mood to high mood, and you can cycle back and forth between them. Anytime I see Chiron in communication with Mercury and Uranus, I know that that sort of cycle can pop up. And so if you're sensitive in that way and you know you cycle in that way, um, or suspect you cycle in that way, you may not necessarily have a diagnosis. Just know that this is where you're going to want to take extra precautions to work with the energy in a way that doesn't become disruptive to your life, your energy, your groundedness, and what you're trying to call in. Because with Jupiter in the mix, extremes get even more extreme, not only emotionally, but because Mercury is here, also mentally. This is where thoughts and feelings can become quite blown out of proportion. But again, the purpose here is to get the folks who are stuck on a timeline in a singular way of thinking out of their rut. It's to pop them out of their looping cycle and get them onto a new track by creating a bit of internal pressure. Now, those of you who don't need that kind of pressure, there's plenty of y'all who don't need it. You all are going to find this energy an energy of acceleration. This is where this energy starts to build momentum on things that you have already built for the start of this year and intentions you've already generated. We're going to go much deeper when I come back to you for the Taurus new moon in a couple weeks. If you heard something you liked, something you resonated, feel free to send this to a friend, share, drop me a comment, let me know. And again, is it Yod or is it Yod? I'm still trying to figure that out. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And if you're joining me for the Twin Flame update, I will see you over there. Take great care and bye for now.